Listen, if someone has disrespected you and you had the strength to walk away, do not go back. Period. I know what you're thinking. What if they change? What if I overreacted? What if I miss them? No, let me stop you right there. Because this is how people get trapped. Not once, not twice, but over and over again in the same emotional loop that drains their energy and chips away at their self-worth. They replay the same arguments, the same apologies, the same promises that never lead anywhere new, and you don't deserve that, not again. Because when someone disrespects you, they are showing you exactly how much they value you. They are telling you what place you hold in their world, and it's not confusion, it's clarity. Disrespect is never a misunderstanding. It's not an accident. It's not something that just happened. It's a decision. And every time you overlook that decision, you're sending one right back that says, I accept this, you can do this again. And that's where so many people get stuck. They think if they let it slide once, it's no big deal. They tell themselves the person didn't mean it, that maybe they were too harsh, that it's just a bad day, that maybe they're being dramatic. But here's the truth. The moment you excuse disrespect, you teach someone that your boundaries are optional. And once they believe that, they'll test it again and again and again, because they've learned there are no real consequences. Respect is not something you should ever have to negotiate. It's not something you should remind someone to give you. It's either there or it isn't. And if someone is willing to cross that line once, they will do it again. Not because you're unworthy, but because they know they can. Think about that. Think about the strongest relationships you've ever had, the ones that made you feel grounded, seen, respected. Do those people ever make you question your worth? Do they ever cut deep with words and then shrug it off like it's nothing? No, because when someone truly values you, they don't gamble with your peace. They protect it. When they mess up, they don't just say sorry, they show it. They don't just promise to change, they make sure you never have to doubt them again. And that's what respect looks like. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, it's quiet consistency. It's action that aligns with care. It's someone making sure their words and their behavior match, even when no one's watching. But let's flip this for a second. Think about a moment when you felt disrespected, when someone dismissed your feelings, minimized your pain, made you feel like you didn't matter. And when you called it out, what did they do? Did they own it or did they gaslight you? Did they reflect or did they deflect? Did they change or did they repeat it? Here's the truth that most people don't want to face. Someone who truly respects you doesn't put themselves in a position where they have to keep apologizing. They don't make their bad day your burden. They don't say, that's just how I am as an excuse to hurt you. They don't turn their lack of emotional control into your problem to solve. Because respect isn't just how someone treats you when things are good. It's how they treat you when they're frustrated, angry, or insecure. It's how they handle your boundaries when they don't benefit from them. It's how they respond when you finally say, enough. People will always treat you based on the standards you set for yourself. If you show them that your boundaries bend, they'll push until they break. If you show them that you'll always forgive, they'll stop fearing the loss of you. If you let them back in after they've broken your trust, they'll believe they can do it again because you just taught them that they can. This is why walking away from disrespect is one of the most powerful things you will ever do. It's not about revenge. It's not about being cold. It's not even about proving a point. It's about protecting your peace. It's about honoring your worth. It's about making a silent statement that says, I'm no longer available for anything that costs me my dignity. And I know that's not easy. I know walking away sounds simple until you're standing there, holding a heart that still cares, trying to convince your mind that it's time to let go. But listen, the moment someone disrespects you, they're revealing their capacity for care, and it's not your job to expand it. You can't love someone into respecting you. You can't pour understanding into someone who refuses to listen. You can't explain your worth to someone committed to misunderstanding it, because the truth is, if someone truly respected you, they would never have made you question if they did. They would never force you to defend your right to be treated well. They would never act like kindness, communication, or basic decency are too much to ask. And that's what you have to remember. The way someone treats you is a reflection of them, but the way you respond, that's a reflection of you. It shows what you believe you deserve. It shows whether you value yourself enough to walk away when respect disappears. So if you're standing in that space right now, that confusing, emotional, heavy place where your heart is torn between what it wants and what it knows, I want you to breathe. I want you to remember that walking away doesn't make you weak. It makes you wise, because staying in a place where your peace is constantly being negotiated is not love. It's self-abandonment, and you don't owe anyone that. When you choose to walk away from disrespect, you're not just ending a relationship. You're rewriting your story. You're saying, I choose me. And that's the first step toward the life you actually deserve. Because the longer you tolerate being disrespected, the more you train your brain to believe that's normal. But it's not. You deserve connection that feels safe, conversations that build, and love that never makes you question your worth. Walking away is not the end. It's the beginning of remembering who you are. Here's the thing. Walking away is only half the battle. The real challenge begins when the silence hits. When the noise fades and you're left alone with your thoughts, that's when the doubts start whispering. Did I make a mistake? What if I was too harsh? What if they really changed this time? Those questions come like waves, soft at first, then heavy enough to pull you under if you let them. Because leaving someone who disrespected you isn't just about distance. It's about detaching from the illusion that they'll suddenly become the person you always hoped they'd be. It's easy to walk away from the action. It's harder to walk away from the story you built in your head, the version of them you believed in, the hope that maybe they'd wake up and see your worth. That hope is powerful and dangerous because it disguises itself as love. It convinces you that patience is strength, that forgiveness is proof of growth, that staying is noble. But none of that is true if it comes at the expense of your peace. Hope, when misplaced, becomes the rope that ties you to the very thing that keeps hurting you. You see, people don't go back to disrespect because they like pain. They go back because fear and hope dance together in their mind. The fear of being alone whispers that maybe it's better to have something than nothing. And hope replies that maybe, if you wait a little longer, they'll change. The combination traps you in limbo, not moving forward, not fully going back, just existing in between. That's not love. That's survival. The truth is, if someone had the ability to respect you, they would have done it from the start. Respect isn't something that blooms after a series of apologies. It's either there or it's not. You can't teach someone to value you through suffering. You can't prove your worth by staying where it isn't recognized. Every time you accept less than what you deserve, you confirm to yourself and to them that disrespect is acceptable. And here's what makes it so difficult. Disrespect doesn't always look like shouting or betrayal. Sometimes it's quiet. It's the dismissive tone, the constant interruptions, the forgotten promises, the way they make your feelings seem exaggerated or your needs inconvenient. It's subtle enough that you question if you're overreacting. That's how it hooks you. It makes you doubt your own perception until you start believing that maybe you're the problem. But you're not. You're just conditioned to minimize your pain so others can stay comfortable. Every time you walk back into a situation that once broke you, you teach your nervous system to expect chaos. You teach your mind that peace is foreign, that love comes with confusion, that safety is temporary. That kind of programming doesn't just hurt your relationships, it rewires your self-worth. You start believing you need to earn respect by proving your loyalty, that you need to tolerate disrespect to keep someone close. But real love doesn't require you to lose yourself. Here's a truth most people never say out loud. Walking away is not punishment. It's protection. It's not about proving them wrong. It's about proving to yourself that you were right to want more. Because you are not asking for too much, you're just asking the wrong person. The right person will never make you feel like respect is something to negotiate. They won't make you beg for understanding or twist yourself into smaller versions just to keep their attention. When you finally decide to stop going back, you break the cycle that's been holding you hostage. The fear of being alone begins to lose its grip. You start realizing that peace isn't found in someone else's apology. It's in your own boundaries. You see that solitude isn't a punishment. It's space. Space to rebuild your confidence, to hear your own voice again, to feel your strength return one quiet morning at a time. And yes, it will feel uncomfortable. You'll have moments where you want to reach out to check if they're thinking about you, to hear that they miss you. But every time you resist that urge, every time you choose silence over reentry, you reclaim another piece of yourself. Confidence doesn't appear when you feel good. It grows when you make hard choices that honor your worth. Eventually, you stop checking your phone. You stop replaying the what-ifs. You stop romanticizing the past. You realize that what you were holding on to wasn't love. It was potential. And potential is not enough to build a peaceful life. You begin to understand that you weren't hard to love. You were just loving someone who wasn't ready to meet you there. That moment, the one where you no longer crave closure, where you no longer need them to understand the damage they caused, that's when you truly walk away. Because closure doesn't come from hearing, "I'm sorry." It comes from deciding you don't need their apology to move on. You don't need them to validate your pain or justify your decision. You already know what happened. You already know what you felt. You already know what you deserve. And when that clarity sets in, something shifts inside you. You stop chasing explanations and start choosing peace. You stop trying to rewrite a story that's already ended and start writing a new one where respect is the baseline, not the reward. There comes a point after you've walked away when the silence no longer hurts, it teaches. At first, it's disorienting. The quiet feels too big, too loud. You're used to noise, the constant tension, the cycles of apology and disappointment, the emotional chaos disguised as love. Now, there's only you. No text lighting up your screen, no explanations to chase, no energy spent fixing what you didn't break, just space. And for a while, that space feels like loss. But with time, you start realizing it's freedom in disguise. Because here's what no one tells you about walking away from disrespect. The hardest part isn't leaving them. It's facing the version of yourself that stayed, the one who accepted less, who silenced their instincts, who kept hoping that love would be enough to change someone who didn't want to change. That version of you deserves compassion, not judgment. They weren't weak. They were trying to protect what they believed could still be saved. But now, standing in your own quiet, you start to see what you couldn't before. You weren't meant to save them. You were meant to save yourself. This is where the transformation begins. Not in the decision to walk away, but in the decision to stay away. To stay gone even when the memories soften. To stay strong even when loneliness tries to convince you to go back. Because loneliness lies. It tells you that silence means emptiness, when really it's the soil where you start growing again. In the beginning, your mind will try to pull you backward. It will replay moments of affection, kind words, promises, laughter. It will show you the highlight reel of what once felt like love, not the full picture of what it truly was. Memory has a way of romanticizing what hurt us because pain demands meaning, but clarity only comes with distance. And distance only comes when you stop returning to the same fire, expecting not to get burned. Staying away teaches you that peace isn't boring, it's powerful. That calm isn't emptiness, it's safety. That consistency isn't dull, it's respect. When you've spent enough time in chaos, stillness feels unfamiliar, almost wrong. But over time, that stillness becomes the proof that you made the right choice. You start noticing small things again, the weight of your own breath, the calm of mornings without anxiety, the relief of not waiting for the next argument to erupt. That's not loneliness. That's your nervous system healing. And something shifts when you begin to trust that calm. You start to realize that respect isn't something you earn. It's something you require. It's not a reward for being patient, kind, or forgiving. It's the standard, the baseline. Anything less than that is not love, it's dependence. Real love doesn't make you question if you're too much. It doesn't silence you or shrink you. It doesn't make you trade your self-respect for temporary comfort. Here's the truth. The person who disrespected you didn't suddenly forget how to treat people well. They chose not to treat you well. Maybe they respected their boss, their friends, strangers online, but with you, they felt entitled to cross lines, to test boundaries, to see how far they could go before you'd say, enough. And every time you forgave without seeing real change, you told them they could keep trying. That's not love, it's conditioning. You were trained to equate tolerance with loyalty, but loyalty has no value when it's tied to disrespect. And then one day, something small happens. You see a message from them, or maybe a photo, or a memory resurfaces, and for the first time, your heart doesn't ache. You don't feel anger or longing, just clarity. You realize that what you once called love was you trying to prove your worth to someone who couldn't see it. You finally understand that closure doesn't come from them saying, I'm sorry. It comes from you saying, I deserve better, and meaning it. This is the moment when power returns, not in loud declarations, but in quiet conviction. You stop needing validation. You stop explaining your decision. You stop waiting for them to understand the pain they caused. You realize it's not your job to educate someone on how to treat you. You're not their lesson. You're your own responsibility. And that responsibility changes everything. It forces you to rebuild, not around their absence, but around your own presence. You start setting boundaries that feel uncomfortable at first, but necessary. You begin saying no to things that drain you. You stop over-explaining and start protecting your energy. And little by little, you begin to recognize yourself again. The version of you that existed before disrespect became normal. It's in those quiet mornings, those peaceful nights, when you realize you're not waiting for anyone anymore, you're not hoping for an apology, not craving their attention, not replaying the past. You're just here in the present, and for the first time, it feels enough. That's the reward of staying away. Not revenge, not validation, peace. Because the truth is, walking away doesn't mean you stopped caring, it means you started caring about yourself more. And that's not selfish, that's survival, that's growth, that's self-respect finally becoming louder than fear. There's a quiet moment after healing begins when you start seeing things as they really were. It's not dramatic, it doesn't come with a sudden revelation or a loud awakening. It's subtle, like fog lifting from a landscape you've been staring at for too long. What once looked complicated, confusing, maybe even special, now looks simple. Someone disrespected you, and you stayed longer than you should have. That's it. No more excuses, no more tangled reasoning, no more rewriting history to make it hurt less. You just see it, finally, for what it was. And that moment, that pure, clear recognition, is the beginning of freedom. Because you can't truly move forward until you stop romanticizing what broke you. The mind has a strange loyalty to pain. It wants to find purpose in what hurt us. It wants to believe there was a reason we endured it, that maybe it wasn't all for nothing. But sometimes, the only reason it happened is because we didn't know how to walk away sooner. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. We all crave connection, even when it costs us too much. What's powerful is what comes after that realization. You start seeing patterns, not just in others, but in yourself. You notice the small ways you abandoned your own boundaries, the times you stayed quiet instead of speaking up, the moments you brushed off disrespect because you didn't want to seem too sensitive or too demanding. You start recognizing that every time you accepted less, it wasn't just them crossing a line, it was you moving the line for them. That recognition stings, but it's also where the transformation begins. Because when you finally understand your own role in the cycle, you stop waiting for others to change. You take responsibility for your peace, your standards, your boundaries. You stop making exceptions for people who make you question your worth. You stop treating your heart like a project for someone else to fix. You start protecting it, not out of fear, but out of respect. Healing from disrespect isn't about bitterness. It's about clarity. It's not about closing your heart. It's about becoming intentional with who gets access to it. You start learning that love without respect isn't love at all. It's attachment, dependency, habit. Real love, the kind that lasts and nourishes, comes from mutual care, not control. It comes from two people who value each other's peace as much as their own. You begin to see that respect isn't about grand gestures or apologies. It's built quietly through consistency. It's in how someone listens when you speak. It's in whether they show up when it's inconvenient. It's in whether their actions match their words, not once, but always. You realize that the people who truly care don't make you question where you stand. You don't need to remind them to treat you well, they just do. And maybe for the first time, you start holding that same standard for yourself. You stop tolerating chaos disguised as passion. You stop chasing closure from people who couldn't give you clarity when it mattered. You stop apologizing for having expectations. You start showing up for yourself the way you once showed up for others, fully, patiently, with compassion. There's something sacred about that shift. When you no longer chase what hurt you, you begin to attract what heals you. When you stop explaining your worth, you start embodying it. When you stop begging for respect, you start living like you deserve it, and the world adjusts to that energy. The same people who once took you for granted may notice the change, but it's not for them to understand. It's for you to live. And then, without realizing it, you start to glow differently, not in a loud, look at me way, but in a quiet, grounded way that says, I know who I am now. You no longer seek validation in other people's attention. You no longer need to prove your loyalty by tolerating pain. You stop equating endurance with love, because here's the truth. Strength isn't staying where you're disrespected. It's having the courage to leave and never return. It's the patience to rebuild your life brick by brick, even when it feels lonely. It's the discipline to choose peace over nostalgia, boundaries over longing, dignity over comfort. And every time you make that choice, your confidence grows. Not the loud kind, but the steady kind. The kind that doesn't need approval to feel sure. And eventually, the story changes. The same situation that once broke you becomes the reason you never settle again. The same silence that once scared you becomes the peace you protect fiercely. The same pain that once defined you becomes the proof of your growth. Because walking away from disrespect wasn't the end of your story. It was the start of a new one where you finally understand that respect is not something you ask for. It's something you embody, something you live by, something you never compromise again. There comes a time when you stop talking about what happened and start building from it. The story stops being about them, the one who disrespected you, and starts being about you, the one who chose to rise. Because real healing isn't found in the constant retelling of the hurt. It's found in the quiet reconstruction that follows. It's in the way you start making decisions differently. It's in the way you pause before saying yes to something that doesn't feel right. It's in how you finally stop confusing tolerance with kindness. People often believe healing means forgetting, moving on, pretending it never happened. But healing is not erasure. It's integration. It's the moment you look at your past and say, that happened, it hurt, but it doesn't define me anymore. You start to see that the disrespect you endured didn't break you. It taught you what never to allow again. It became the lesson that shaped your standards, your boundaries, your self-worth. It became the reason you now know the difference between love that builds and love that drains. You learn that boundaries are not walls. They're doors with locks that you control. You can open them to people who treat you with care, and you can close them to those who don't. Boundaries aren't about keeping people out. They're about keeping your peace in. They're how you tell the world, this is how I deserve to be treated. And you stop apologizing for that, because the moment you apologize for protecting yourself is the moment you hand your power away. This is also when you begin to understand what self-respect really means. It's not just self-love affirmations or motivational quotes. It's discipline. It's the quiet commitment to not return to chaos just because it's familiar. It's choosing to stay single rather than forcing connection. It's the courage to leave the table when respect is no longer being served, even when your heart still wants to stay seated. And there's a freedom that comes with that discipline, a strength that can't be faked. You stop needing to prove your worth through loyalty to the wrong people. You stop begging for attention because you finally understand that attention isn't the same as respect. You stop settling for the bare minimum because you know that the right people won't make you question whether you deserve more. They'll simply give it. But let's be honest, this new strength doesn't arrive overnight. It builds slowly, almost imperceptibly, in the choices you make each day. The morning you resist the urge to check their social media. The afternoon you delete the message draft you'll never send. The night you realize you can breathe again without waiting for an apology that never came. Healing isn't a straight line. It's a series of quiet victories that no one sees but you. And then something incredible happens. You start to trust yourself again. For so long, you doubted your instincts. You thought you were too emotional, too sensitive, too much. But now you see that your intuition wasn't wrong. It was the only voice that tried to protect you. You begin to honor it, to listen when it whispers, "This doesn't feel right." You learn that peace is louder than passion, that consistency is more attractive than intensity, that love doesn't have to hurt to feel real. You also start to notice how your world shifts when you respect yourself. People treat you differently, not because they've changed, but because you have. You carry yourself with quiet certainty. You no longer over-explain. You no longer chase. You no longer accept half efforts. You radiate a kind of energy that says, "I know my value." And that energy repels what isn't aligned with it. It's not arrogance, it's alignment. When you live with self-respect, you stop being available for chaos. You stop entertaining people who thrive on confusion. You stop confusing emotional highs and lows with love. You realize that stability isn't boring, it's sacred. And once you taste peace, chaos loses its appeal. And this is where real transformation lives. When your self-worth no longer depends on how someone else sees you. When your happiness isn't conditional on someone's apology. When your love for yourself becomes the standard for how others must love you too. You stop asking, "Why did they treat me that way?" and start asking, "Why did I allow it for so long?" And that question doesn't come from blame. It comes from awareness, because awareness is the birthplace of change. The person you were back then, the one who tolerated disrespect, who confused potential with reality, who tried to fix what wasn't theirs to fix, deserves your forgiveness. They didn't know what you know now. They hadn't learned that peace is not negotiable. And that's what growth really is. Not perfection, but awareness. One day you'll look back and realize that what once felt like the end was actually a beginning. The moment you walked away from disrespect wasn't the moment you lost someone. It was the moment you found yourself. And that version of you, the one who refuses to settle, who protects their peace, who knows their worth, that's the version that was waiting for you all along. There's a shift that happens when healing turns into growth. It's subtle at first, like a quiet change in the rhythm of your days, but then you start noticing it everywhere. You wake up without that heavy feeling in your chest. You stop scanning the past for meaning. You start living, really living, in the present moment. That's the thing about walking away from disrespect. It doesn't just free you from another person's behavior, it frees you from the version of yourself that accepted it. For the first time in a long while, your energy begins to return to you. All the strength you used to spend trying to fix, explain, prove, or hold together something that was never meant to last, it flows back into your own life. And with that energy comes clarity. You start to see how much space that old pain occupied, how much of yourself you sacrificed just to keep peace that never really existed. You realize that keeping the peace often meant abandoning your own truth, and now that truth is something you refuse to silence again. This is where real power lives, not in control, not in confrontation, but in peace. Because peace is not passive, it's not weakness. It's choosing not to engage in things that steal your sense of self. It's refusing to participate in conversations that go nowhere, relationships that drain you, and cycles that repeat no matter how much you give. Peace is strength that's learned through experience, and once you've tasted it, you'll do anything to protect it. You begin to see relationships differently. You no longer look for intensity. You look for consistency. You don't want someone who knows how to apologize. You want someone who doesn't need to keep doing it. You no longer confuse chemistry with connection or comfort with compatibility. You learn that love isn't supposed to be a battlefield. It's supposed to be a place of safety. The people who truly respect you won't make you prove your worth. They'll mirror it back to you through their actions, not their promises. And in that understanding, forgiveness becomes easier, not for them, but for you. Because you start realizing that holding on to anger keeps you tied to the very thing you walked away from. Forgiveness isn't about letting someone back in. It's about letting yourself move forward. It's the quiet acknowledgement that what they did was wrong, but it no longer controls your emotions. It's when you can look back without bitterness, without the urge to explain or defend yourself, and simply say, I've outgrown this. There's something profoundly beautiful about that stage of healing. You no longer need to be understood. You need to be at peace. You stop seeking closure because you've already closed the door. You stop replaying conversations in your head because you've realized that no amount of analysis can change what already happened. The only thing left to do is live better. And that's exactly what you start doing. You pour that energy into yourself, into your work, your passions, your friendships, your dreams. You rediscover the things that make you feel alive, the parts of yourself that were silenced by constant compromise. You start noticing how your world expands when you stop settling, how opportunities appear when you no longer chase what isn't meant for you. Life begins to respond differently when you stop shrinking for it. And somewhere along the way, you realize that respect isn't something you demand. It's something you attract by how you live. When you carry yourself with self-respect, the world takes notice. You stop entertaining people who treat you like an option. You stop negotiating your worth. You stop being accessible to those who haven't earned the right to your presence, not out of arrogance, but out of understanding, because you finally know what it costs to allow the wrong people in. There's also this new kind of calm that appears, not the fragile kind that depends on circumstances, but the unshakable kind that comes from knowing who you are. You don't get easily pulled into other people's chaos anymore. You stop reacting to every insult, every provocation, every test, not because you don't care, but because you care too much about your peace to lose it over something small. You've learned that silence is sometimes the loudest answer. And that silence, it's not emptiness anymore, it's power. It's the pause between who you were and who you're becoming. It's the breath you take before saying no to what no longer aligns. It's the proof that you've learned to choose yourself, even when it's hard. Healing at this point is no longer survival, it's creation. You start building a life that reflects your new standards. The people you allow in treat you with care because you do. The situations you attract align with your peace because you protect it. You begin to see that walking away from disrespect was never about ending something. It was about beginning everything that comes after. And one day you catch your reflection and realize you've become someone you used to look for in others. You're steady, grounded, confident, not because life is perfect, but because you no longer depend on anyone else to give you the respect, love, or peace that you already give yourself. And that's when you understand the real victory wasn't walking away. It was never looking back.